Hi guys, in our A-level lesson yesterday we looked at injuries and the different types of injuries that you can get as a result of taking part in sport. Now what we now need to look at is a little bit different content to what we learned at GCSE, but we now need to look at what things you can do to prevent the likelihood of an injury occurring. Now it's really important to note here, you can never fully stop an injury from happening. All we can do are follow some pretty handy strategies to prevent the likelihood of them happening. So keep on listening to find out a little bit more. Now, one of the first injury prevention strategies that an athlete can follow is screening. Now, screening involves checks being completed before exercise to make sure that you are healthy and well. I guess if we cast our mind back to GCSE PE, an example of screening that you would be familiar with is a PAR-Q, or a physical activity readiness questionnaire. Now, if you can remember, a PAR-Q had lots of health questions on it. So let's say, for example, if one of the questions related to whether you have had any heart-related diseases in the past, if you were to answer yes to that question, then obviously there'll be some huge reservations about the type of activity you should be doing and the intensity. So screening would be used here to not put you at risk. Now there is also another larger scale screening initiative which is currently being rolled out across the country and has been established now for a number of years, and that is what we call the CRY initiative. Now CRY stands for Cardiac Risk in the Young. Basically a little bit of background behind it. There's been some high profile and not such high profile cases of professional sportsmen, particularly footballers, literally collapsing on the pitch with undiagnosed heart conditions. Now, unfortunately, some of those have actually been fatal, and those footballers have actually died as a result. And it's been a common thing in other sports as well. But I think just with the publicity and the media coverage of football, those are the sports that are certainly more in the press. So a Newcastle footballer called Fabrice Muamba a few years ago collapsed during a football match, and thankfully he managed to survive. Now, he collapsed because he had an undiagnosed heart condition as a result of not being screened. So CRY, like I've already said, stands for Cardiac Risk in the Young. And basically what it involves is it's a free or a subsidised heart check for younger players just to make sure they have no underlying condition. Now, it's something that is rolled out across a number of sports across the country. And again, football seems to be one of the main activities that are really trying to drive this and have been really driving it over the past couple of years. So again, CRY is probably a bit more an advanced type of screening that somebody can go through, but also something a little bit more standard that you might know is simply a PAR-Q. A nice easy one, and again one that we looked at previously during GCSE PE. Another injury prevention method could actually just be using protective equipment. Now, protective equipment reduces the chance of injury occurring as the equipment will absorb the impact if hit. And there are a number of different examples that we can think of. Shin pads, for example, in football to absorb the contact if kicked. A cricket player wearing a helmet. A hockey goalkeeper wearing full padded clothing, again just to absorb the impact of the ball. Now again, this protective clothing or protective equipment doesn't completely almost make you almost superhuman to any injury, it just prevents the chance of it happening. Again, not that long ago there was a cricket player, a professional cricket player, went to duck underneath somebody who bowled a bouncer at him. Unfortunately, it hit the gap just behind the helmet and it actually killed him. So even though he was wearing protective equipment, we can see it is only there as a bit of a prevention, and it will not completely stop an injury from occurring. Now, another key thing that we should all follow before taking part in any physical activity is a warm-up. Now, in Year 12, we did look at the physiological things that happen as a result of a warm-up. So it's really important that you do use some of that content if this question or this area sort of comes up. However, there are a couple of main points I think that a warm-up is designed to do. First of all, it increases muscle elasticity pure and simply it makes muscle more pliable and flexible and elastic. So as a result of that, if you are overstretching or overreaching, there is going to be less chance of a strain. It increases body temperature, which again is really important, and it also increases the muscle temperature, again really important. But like I say, look back over your notes to make sure you're really familiar with all of the physiological changes that happen as a result of a warm-up. And again, a warm-up should include a pulse raiser, some sort of stretching. Often we encourage dynamic stretching, but it can depend on the type of activity you're doing and the skill-specific practice, just to make sure you're nice and mentally prepared for your activity. On to flexibility training now. Now this is something again which can be used as an injury prevention method, and it basically encompasses the different types of stretching that we have seen before. So this is flexibility training. Again, cast your mind back to year 12. We did look at stretching in year 12 and lots of this content remains exactly the same. Let's just recap it a little bit though. So first of all, we have active stretching. This is where a stretched position is held by the performer's own agonist. We then have passive, where the stretched position is held by a partner or a body part. We then have static, where the stretched position is held at end of the range of movement and is stationary with no movement. And then we then have ballistic, which is bouncing in and out of a stretch. Now there are a couple of ways that we remembered this before, wasn't there? If you can remember, we have active, we use the A because that then is held by an agonist. Passive, we use the P being held by a partner or a part, a body part. We then used S of static for the fact it's stationary, and we use B for ballistic with the fact that it is bouncing in and out of a stretch. Again, look back through your notes last year just so you're 100% confident on the different methods of stretching. But again, this could be something that you might do to prevent an injury from occurring. A real proper stretching session before you train or you compete. And finally, the injury prevention method that you might decide to carry out is taping and bracing. Now both of these come under the same example because they're pretty similar. Taping and bracing is basically a method of supporting and stabilizing a joint. Taping is generally not as supportive, and basically special tape is used to wrap around a joint, often in key places, to stabilize it during sport and to hold it in position. Whereas bracing, again, it does exactly the same job. Its job is to hold a joint and support a joint in position. It's normally a bit more heavy duty and is normally a device which is used, like I say, to stabilize or support a joint. Andy Murray, for example, if you watch Andy Murray play tennis, you'll notice he wears braces around his ankle joints. And again, you can see from the images here, these are volleyball, and again, they are wearing ankle straps as well, or ankle braces as well. Again, just to provide some support and stabilization during activity.